You hear rustling in the kitchen. It's the middle of the night. You tiptoe towards the noise, heart pounding, only to find your puppy stealing food. But when you realize why he did it, your heart shatters into a million pieces. Dogs can be mischievous, right? Sometimes they do things that make no sense, digging up your backyard, chewing on your shoes, or, in this case, sneaking food at night. But what if I told you this little act of mischief had a heartbreaking reason behind it? What if this wasn't just a case of a greedy puppy, but something much deeper? This story will change how you see your pet forever. Max was not just any puppy. He was the heart of the household, the kind of dog who could bring a smile to your face even on the worst days. His golden fur was soft and fluffy, and his tail never stopped wagging. If you were having a bad day, Max was there. If you were feeling lonely, Max would nuzzle his head into your lap, as if he knew exactly what you needed. Sarah and Mark, his owners, had brought him home from a shelter just a few months ago. The moment they saw him, they knew he was meant to be part of their family. His big brown eyes held a mixture of curiosity and innocence, and the way he excitedly jumped into Sarah's arms the first time they met, it was as if he had been waiting for them all along. Life with Max was perfect. He had everything a puppy could ever want: a cozy bed near the fireplace, a mountain of toys scattered across the living room, fresh food, and clean water every single day, and most importantly, a family that loved him beyond words. That's why, when they found out what Max had been doing in the middle of the night, it didn't make sense. It started with small things. Sarah would wake up in the morning and notice that Max's food bowl looked slightly emptier than it had the night before. At first, she thought maybe she had miscounted how much she had fed him, or perhaps Mark had given him an extra treat before bed. But then, one night, she heard something unusual, a faint rustling sound. It was late, past midnight, and the house was supposed to be quiet. Sarah sat up in bed, listening carefully. At first, she thought maybe it was just the wind outside. But then she heard it again. Soft footsteps, the distinct click of little paws against the wooden floor. Sarah nudged Mark, whispering, "Do you hear that?" Mark groaned, still half asleep. "It's probably just Max getting comfortable. Go back to sleep." But Sarah wasn't convinced. The next morning, she decided to investigate. She walked into the kitchen and immediately noticed something strange. Max's food bowl was still half full, but a few pieces of kibble were missing. Not much, just a handful. But what caught her attention even more was the tiny trail of crumbs leading away from the bowl. She followed them, and that's when she found it, under the couch. A small stash of food, pieces of kibble, half a slice of bread, and even a biscuit she hadn't given him. Sarah frowned, confused. "Max, what are you doing?" she muttered, picking up the food. She turned to see Max sitting nearby, his ears slightly down, his eyes watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Guilt, fear, or something else. At first, Sarah and Mark brushed it off as a weird puppy habit. Maybe Max was just playing with his food. Or maybe, like some dogs, he was just hoarding it for later. But then things started getting stranger. Every night, more food went missing, and Max wasn't eating it. Instead, he was hiding it, not just under the couch, but in the most unexpected places. Sarah found a small pile of food stuffed inside one of Mark's old sneakers near the door. Another stash was hidden behind the curtains. One night, she even found a piece of bread buried under Max's own bed. This wasn't normal. Max had never been deprived of food. He was fed well, given treats, and had never gone hungry a day in his life. So why was he acting like he needed to save his food? And then, things got even worse. One morning, Sarah woke up and went to check on Max normally. He would jump up the second she entered the room, wagging his tail like crazy, excited for his morning belly rubs. But today, he didn't move. He was curled up in the corner of the living room, his head resting on his paws. His body looked tense, his ears slightly pulled back. His food bowl was untouched. "Max," Sarah called gently, kneeling beside him. He didn't lift his head. Her heart pounded. This wasn't like him. He was always so full of energy. But now he looked defeated. Sarah reached out and ran her fingers through his fur, and that's when she heard it. A soft, heartbreaking whimper. She felt something twist deep in her chest. Something was wrong. But what? Max wasn't sick. He wasn't injured. And yet, something was making him act this way. Mark, who had just woken up, walked in and frowned. "Why isn't he eating?" Sarah shook her head. "I don't know. He hasn't touched his food since last night. They tried everything. They gave him his favorite treats. Nothing. They tried hand-feeding him. He barely sniffed it. Max just laid there, staring at the food like he wanted to eat it, but something was stopping him." That's when Sarah noticed something odd. Max kept glancing at the back door. His eyes would dart toward it every few seconds. then back at his food, like he was waiting for something or someone. Sarah's mind raced. Why was he looking at the door? She walked over and peered outside. The backyard was empty. The sun was rising, casting soft golden light across the grass. Nothing seemed out of place, but Max kept watching, and that's when Sarah remembered something. A few weeks before they adopted Max, she had seen a stray dog roaming the neighborhood. A thin, scruffy-looking mutt who never got too close, but always lingered near their street. Could it be? A sudden chill ran down her spine. She turned back to Max, her mind connecting the dots. The missing food, the hidden stashes, the way he always looked toward the door at night. Sarah's heart pounded as a realization hit her. Max wasn't stealing food for himself. He was saving it for someone else, someone who was still out there, someone he hadn't forgotten. Sarah's breathing quickened. She turned to Mark, who was now watching Max with the same look of concern. I think I know why he's doing this. Mark raised an eyebrow. Why? Sarah hesitated before saying it out loud. Because he's not alone. Mark's expression shifted from confusion to realization. Max let out a small whimper, his tail twitching slightly. Sarah knew they couldn't ignore this anymore. They had to find out the truth. That night, they set up a camera in the kitchen. They had to know who Max was waiting for, and what they saw on the footage left them speechless. Sarah and Mark sat in stunned silence, replaying the footage over and over again. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Their playful, energetic puppy, who had never known hunger, who had a warm bed, and who was spoiled with love, was quietly sneaking food and leaving it by the door, waiting for someone. For almost an hour, Max had just sat there, his tail curled around his body, his ears perked up, eyes locked onto the back door. Every few minutes, he would glance down at the small piece of bread he had placed on the floor, then back at the door, as if expecting someone to come for it. But no one did. Not yet. Sarah felt a lump rise in her throat. Mark finally broke the silence. He's waiting for someone, he said, his voice quiet. Sarah nodded, still staring at the screen. But who? That question lingered in the air, heavy with mystery. They had to find out. The next night, Sarah and Mark decided to stay up. Instead of just watching the footage in the morning, they wanted to see it happen with their own eyes. They made sure all the lights were off, then sat in the living room with a clear view of the kitchen and the back door. Max was curled up in his usual spot, his breathing slow and steady. For hours, nothing happened. But then, at exactly 2:14 a.m., Max stirred. Sarah held her breath as the puppy slowly lifted his head, glancing toward the kitchen. He waited a moment, listening carefully, before quietly standing up. His paws barely made a sound as he crept across the floor. Sarah and Mark watched as Max made his way into the kitchen. Just like in the video, he paused near his food bowl, sniffed around, then carefully grabbed a small piece of bread. He didn't eat it. He carried it gently, as if it was something fragile, and tiptoed back toward the living room. Mark swallowed hard. Max reached the back door. Then, just like before, he pawed at it, once, twice, then let out a soft, almost pleading whimper. Sarah felt her heart squeeze. Max carefully placed the piece of bread on the floor, just like in the video, and then he waited. His little body sat perfectly still, except for the slight flick of his tail. His ears twitched at every sound outside. His eyes remained locked on the door. Minutes passed. Sarah and Mark exchanged glances, their breathing shallow. Something was coming. At first, there was nothing but silence. The wind rustled softly outside. An owl hooted in the distance. And then, a sound, soft, almost unnoticeable. But Max noticed. His tail thumped once against the floor. His ears perked up higher. Sarah felt her pulse quicken as she squinted into the darkness beyond the glass door. And then she saw it, two glowing eyes, just beyond the backyard fence, barely visible in the dim light of the moon. A shadowy figure lingered. A dog, a thin, scruffy-looking stray. Sarah gasped. Max let out another small whimper, his tail wagging ever so slightly. The stray dog didn't move at first. It just stood there watching, its body tense, its ribs faintly visible even in the dark. Mark whispered, "That's the same dog, the one we used to see a few weeks ago." Sarah nodded. She remembered, a lonely, scared-looking mutt that had wandered their street not too long ago. It had always kept its distance, never getting too close to people. Then one day it was just gone, or so they thought. But now it was back, and it wasn't alone. It had been watching Max. Or rather, Max had been watching it. Sarah's chest tightened as she watched the scene unfold. Max didn't bark. He didn't growl. Instead, he nudged the bread slightly closer to the door and wagged his tail, just a little. A signal, an invitation. The stray dog hesitated, Its thin body remained still, its ears flicking back and forth, as if debating whether to trust the situation. Sarah's heart pounded. Was this what had been happening every night? Had Max been doing this for weeks? Had the stray been coming, eating the food? How long had this silent exchange been going on? Mark leaned forward, whispering, "Look," slowly. So slowly it was almost painful to watch. The stray took a step forward, then another, and another, until it was standing just inches from the back door. Max let out the tiniest, softest bark. Not a warning, a greeting. The stray sniffed the air, its nose twitching. Its eyes darted between Max and the small offering of bread. And then, finally, it took the food. A single bite. Sarah exhaled a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Max's tail wagged a little faster. The stray didn't run. It stayed, chewing slowly, watching. For the first time, it looked safe. Sarah and Mark watched in awe as the scene played out in front of them. Max had been feeding this dog, caring for it, looking out for it, and the stray knew it. Sarah's throat tightened. This wasn't just some random act of kindness from their puppy. This was something deeper, something instinctual, something human. Max wasn't just feeding a stray. He was protecting a friend who had once been alone, a friend who had once been him. That's when it all made sense. Max had come from a shelter. Before he was adopted, he had lived in uncertainty. He had known what it felt like to be hungry, to feel lost, to be alone. And now, in his warm, loving home, he hadn't forgotten. He had recognized that same loneliness in another, and he had done something about it, in the only way he knew how. By sharing, by waiting, by caring. Sarah wiped a tear from her cheek. Mark let out a slow breath. "What do we do now?" he asked softly. Sarah knew the answer before he even finished asking. "We help him." Mark nodded. Max let out a soft huff, his eyes still locked on the stray. A silent promise, a bond unbroken. And as the night stretched on, Sarah and Mark realized something. Max hadn't just saved a life. He had taught them a lesson about kindness, about love, and about the kind of loyalty only a dog could understand. Max had a friend, not just any friend, a friend from his past. Sarah's heart clenched as the realization washed over her. This wasn't just any stray dog. This was someone Max knew, someone he had loved, someone he had lost. And now, he was trying to take care of him the only way he knew how, with food, with patience, with love. Sarah swallowed the lump in her throat as she looked at Max, who was still staring at the stray with soft, longing eyes. Mark let out a slow breath beside her. This was his family, he murmured. Sarah nodded. Max had been rescued from the streets. They had taken him in, given him a home, loved him as their own, but they had never stopped to think about what, or who, he had left behind. And now here it was, a piece of Max's past, standing right in front of them. Sarah didn't think. She just moved. Slowly, carefully, she reached for the door handle. The stray noticed immediately. Its ears flicked back, its muscles tensed. Fear, deep ingrained fear. Sarah froze. She didn't want to scare it away. But before she could second-guess herself, Max did something unexpected. He stepped forward and placed his paw against the glass door. A small, gentle thump. The stray's ears twitched again. Max let out a tiny, almost pleading whimper. A sound that wasn't meant to scare. A sound that meant, "It's okay. You're safe." The stray hesitated. For the first time, it looked directly at Max. Really looked. A silent conversation passed between them. A conversation of memories, of cold nights, of shared hunger, of survival. And then, the stray's tail moved. Just a tiny flick, barely noticeable. But Sarah noticed. It was a sign of trust. Sarah took a deep breath and turned the handle. The door creaked softly as it opened. Cold night air rushed in. Max didn't move. He just wagged his tail and let out another soft sound. A greeting, an invitation. The stray took a step back, its body tensed as if preparing to run. Sarah's heart pounded. "Please don't go." She took another step forward, slowly lowering herself to the ground. She kept her movements calm, steady, non-threatening. Then, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small piece of chicken. The stray's nose twitched. Its eyes darted between Sarah and Max. It was hungry. It wanted to trust, but it was scared. Max, sensing the hesitation, did something that made Sarah's chest tighten. He wagged his tail even harder, then leaned forward and licked the stray's face through the air. It was the softest, most reassuring gesture she had ever seen. A brother's comfort, a promise. "I'm still here. You're not alone." The stray blinked. Then, hesitantly, it stepped forward, one paw, then another. Sarah held her breath. It sniffed the air again. Then, it took the food. Sarah's hand trembled as she watched the stray chew. its body still tense, but no longer afraid. Max let out a tiny, excited whimper, licking the stray's face again. The stray let him. Mark let out a breath of relief. He trusts Max, he whispered. Sarah nodded, tears prickling her eyes. Trust. It wasn't something you could demand. It wasn't something you could buy. It was something you earned. And Max had earned it. Through patience, through kindness, through love. Sarah swallowed the lump in her throat and looked at Mark. We can't leave him out here. Mark hesitated for only a moment before nodding. We won't. They had rescued Max once. Now it was time to rescue him. The stray wasn't ready to come inside. That much was clear, even as it finished eating, even as it sat closer to Max. Its body remained stiff, its eyes always watching. It had spent too long surviving on its own, too long without a family, too long without safety. Sarah and Mark didn't want to force it, but they also couldn't leave it out in the cold. So they compromised. That night, they left the back door open, just a crack. They set out a blanket, a small bed, more food, an invitation, a choice. Max stayed by the door all night, watching, waiting, hoping, and just before sunrise, something incredible happened. The stray, still thin, still cautious, still uncertain, took a single step inside, then another, and for the first time in what must have been years, he curled up beside Max and closed his eyes, not in fear, but in peace. Sarah couldn't hold back her tears. Max had done it. He had saved his friend, not with force, not with fear, but with love. Sarah knelt beside them, gently placing her hand near the stray. He flinched slightly. Then, after a long moment, he sniffed her fingers. A test, a question, and when she didn't move, when she just waited, he made his decision. He nudged her hand, a single, hesitant nudge. Sarah choked back a sob. Welcome home. The stray's tail wagged. Just once, just enough. A silent thank you, and for the first time in a long time, he was safe. Mark crouched down beside Sarah, watching as the two dogs curled up together. Max, his loyal heart bigger than they had ever realized, and the stray, finally home. Sarah reached out and ran her fingers gently over Max's fur. You never forgot him, did you? She whispered. Max let out a small sigh and nuzzled closer to his friend. It didn't matter how much time had passed. It didn't matter that Max had been given a new life. He had never forgotten where he came from, and he had never forgotten who he had left behind. Now they were together again. Now they were a family. And as Sarah and Mark sat there, watching the two dogs sleep, they realized something profound. Max hadn't just saved a life. He had reminded them of something people often forget. Love isn't about what you have. It's about what you give. And in the quiet of the night, with two dogs sleeping peacefully by their side, Sarah and Mark knew this was the beginning of something beautiful. Max wasn't just stealing food. He was sharing his heart. Sarah and Mark sat on their porch the morning after that unforgettable night, watching as Max and the stray, now curled up beside him, slept peacefully. It was almost surreal. Just a few days ago, they hadn't even known this dog existed, and yet he had been there all along, living in the shadows, waiting for a friend, waiting for someone to remember him. And Max had never forgotten. Sarah knew this wasn't over yet. Yes, the stray had taken a step inside, but that didn't mean he trusted them fully. Not yet. Trust wasn't built in a night. It was built over time, in quiet moments, in small gestures. She and Mark would have to earn it. And so, they started with something simple. Every night, they left food outside. Every morning, it was gone. Not just nibbled on gone. The stray was eating. That was the first sign. But Sarah and Mark wanted more than that. They wanted him to feel safe. They wanted him to know he had a home. So they took it slow. Each day, they sat a little closer to the food dish when he ate. At first, the stray kept his distance, waiting until they went inside before approaching. But then, little by little, something changed. One night, as Sarah sat quietly near the door, the stray didn't wait. He stepped forward. While she was still there, she held her breath. For a long moment, he just stared at her, measuring, deciding. Then, he ate, right in front of her. Sarah blinked back tears. He's starting to trust us. Mark smiled, thanks to Max, because through it all, Max had never left his side. As the days passed, they realized something else. They couldn't keep calling him the stray. He needed a name, a real one that meant something. So, one evening, as they watched him play with Max in the backyard, Sarah turned to Mark. What about Charlie? Mark raised an eyebrow. Charlie. Sarah shrugged, smiling softly. I don't know. It just feels right, like a fresh start, like he belongs. They looked back at the dog, Charlie now. His fur was still a little rough, his body still thin, but his eyes were different, brighter, less afraid. Max trotted over to him, tail wagging, and licked his face. Charlie wagged his tail back. It was the first time they had ever seen him do that, and at that moment Sarah knew he wasn't just a stray anymore. He was family. It was another week before Charlie allowed Sarah to touch him. She had been patient, always letting him come to her on his own terms. And then, one night, as she sat quietly on the porch, something incredible happened. Charlie walked up to her, not hesitantly, not fearfully, just normally, like he belonged there. Sarah held her breath as he stopped beside her, his golden brown eyes looking up at her, searching. And then, he nudged her hand. It was soft, hesitant, but it was enough. Sarah swallowed hard as she slowly, gently, placed her hand on his head. His fur was coarse, but warm beneath her fingers. Charlie didn't flinch. He didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned into her touch. A silent yes, a silent thank you. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she stroked his fur. Welcome home, Charlie. And for the first time, Charlie wagged his tail, just for her. From that moment on, Charlie was a different dog. The fear that once shadowed his eyes slowly faded. He no longer hesitated before stepping inside. He no longer flinched at sudden sounds. He no longer ate his food like it might be taken away. He was learning that love wasn't temporary, that food wasn't scarce, that safety wasn't a trick. Max stayed by his side through it all. He showed Charlie where the best sunspots were. He shared his toys, though Charlie didn't quite understand them at first. And most importantly, he reminded Charlie how to trust again. One night, Sarah found them curled up together on the couch, Max's head resting over Charlie's back. A soft, content sigh escaped Charlie's nose. Sarah smiled. You were never meant to be alone, were you? She whispered. Charlie's tail thumped against the cushion. No, he wasn't, and now, he never would be again. Weeks passed. Charlie gained weight. His fur grew shinier. His eyes lost the haunted look they once held. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. And Max had never been happier. He and Charlie became inseparable. Two halves of the same story. A story of loss. A story of love. A story of second chances. Sarah often found herself watching them, heart full, knowing how lucky they all were to have found each other. One day, as she watched them chase each other around the backyard, Mark nudged her. You know, he said, grinning. Max found Charlie, but I think Charlie found something too. Sarah raised an eyebrow. What? Mark wrapped an arm around her. A family. Sarah smiled, leaning into him. Yeah, I think we all did. And as Max and Charlie tumbled onto the grass, tails wagging, tongues hanging out in sheer joy, she knew Mark was right. This wasn't just a rescue story. It was a homecoming, because in the end, Max hadn't just saved Charlie. Charlie had saved them too. As the seasons changed and life carried on, one thing remained constant. Max and Charlie, they were never apart. Where one went, the other followed. They had been through too much together to ever be separated again. And every now and then, when the house was quiet and the world was still, Sarah would catch Max doing something familiar, something small, something easy to miss. Late at night, when everyone was asleep, he would walk into the kitchen, grab a small piece of food, and place it near the door. Not because anyone was hungry, not because anyone needed it, but because once, a long time ago, someone had. Sarah never moved the food. She just smiled, heart full, knowing Max wasn't just a dog. He was a reminder that love isn't about what we keep, it's about what we give. And sometimes, a small act of kindness can change everything. Charlie had once been alone. Max had once been astray, but not anymore. Now they were home, together, forever. And it all started with a stolen piece of food and a love that refused to be forgotten. If this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe for more emotional pet stories.